Truth be told, Walt Disney was a visionary for his time. He was making cartoons long before it was ever in style. Now, almost a century later, Disney is growing a multi-billion-dollar company that owns some of the most popular titles on the planet, including Star Wars and even frickin' Marvel Studios. But did you know that before Disney could shell out millions of dollars to legally buy big-name franchises, Walt Disney actually built a name off of claiming other popular titles. Nearly every single one of his films are based off of old 17th century and 18th century fables and fairy tales. However, most people are unaware of the fact that a lot of these original stories were actually aimed toward adults. The content was often very graphic and dark. Care to tell your daughters, anyone? And the all-around feel of the stories were more frightening than their colorful Disney counterparts. That's why we here at Channel Frederator are going over some Disney dark secrets, otherwise known as the juicy and horrific details that were hidden from the Disney versions for the sake of the children. In the spirit of the upcoming live-action remake, we'll be focusing on the original unabridged version of Beauty and the Beast, written by Madame de Villeneuve in 1740. I'm your host, Frank James Bailey, and I'm here to tell you Disney fanatics to brace yourselves, because the truth is about to get ugly, visually and figuratively. Beauty's father was a wealthy merchant. Beauty, the girl's actual name in the story, not Belle, was in fact not from humble beginnings. Not by any means. But their family did lose everything in one day. Instead of a lowly inventor, her father was a wealthy merchant, whose house burned to the ground, and all of his shipments sank en route, leaving him and his family of 12 children destitute. Yeah, Beauty had a bunch of siblings in this, instead of absolutely zero we see in the film. They had no choice but to move to a farm on the edge of civilization, and try their best to survive off the land, which was already dead for the most part. Rough. Luckily, after a few years, it seemed as though the family would finally catch a break, as one of the shipments thought to be lost had arrived in pristine condition, so the merchant traveled into the city to collect his half of the merchandise. But unfortunately for him, his shady business partners had him legally declared dead, and they took it upon themselves to take his share of the money. The merchant would then fight for his share in court over the next 6 months. The court ruled in his favor, but after paying legal fees, he was only slightly better off than before. He started on his journey back home through the middle of winter, but was held up by a snowstorm. After spending the night tucked between 2 trees for shelter, he decided to trespass into a seemingly abandoned castle for shelter. The father decides to rob the castle. Okay, look, his intentions weren't exactly devious. When the merchant stumbles upon the castle, he isn't greeted by talking candles and clocks. In fact, there was no one around to be seen. Desperate, the merchant just sort of helps himself to everything. To be fair, he does wait several hours for a host to appear, but no one ever does. What does appear are some very inviting trays of food and drink. So the merchant refuels and begins to search the castle for signs of an owner. He peers through every room in the tower, and when no one turns up, the merchant comes to the logical conclusion that the castle is a gift from the gods, and that everything inside of it must belong to him. The merchant literally rounds up all the treasure in the castle to bring to his snobby, ungrateful kids. Every single one of them made such unrealistic demands whenever they heard the ship had arrived. Everyone except Beauty, who, for obvious reasons, was now the favorite child. There is no time limit on the curse. Still, the rose is very important to the story, even though it's just a normal rose with no magic. If you remember, the rose in the Disney film is enchanted and will continue blooming until the beast turns 21. Once it loses its last petal, he will remain a beast forever, unless he learns to love someone by then, and they reciprocate that love. So it's almost like his timer for the curse. But this rose, in the Villeneuve version, is actually just a regular old flower. As mentioned, in the original story, all the kids want lavish gifts, except for Beauty. All she wants is a single rose to remind her of the lush greenery within the city, something they had long missed since living in such a depleted land. Well, the merchant decides to leave the treasures behind, and instead just takes one single rose from the garden for Beauty. Big mistake. Apparently the beast is cool with him robbing the place, but he draws the line when it comes to his garden. The beast appears behind the merchant and tells him the rose will cost him his life. It must have been some rose. Naturally, the merchant cowers and tries to reason with him, because beasts are known for their rationale, right? Of course, it doesn't work. But it does get the beast thinking, so he proposes an alternative to the merchant. If he can bring back someone to take his place, someone like a pretty daughter, then he will let the man live, and the daughter will forever be his captive instead. Sadly, the merchant agrees to this. He heads back home to collect his daughter, while the beast gives him a friendly reminder that if he doesn't return, he will hunt him down and murder his entire family. Beauty is sold to the beast. Technically, she's more of a trade for the merchant's life, but that's really not much different in this case, because the beast gives the merchant a rather generous dowry for his new prisoner. You know, to really seal the deal. For a moment, the merchant tries to be a bigger man and give himself as prisoner instead, but he cowers at the last minute and blames Beauty for the situation. In fact, the entire family blames Beauty. After all, it was her rose that did him in, so rightfully, she should give her life in his place. It's only fair. Too bad she didn't ask for riches like her other siblings. Thankfully, Beauty is a decent person, and she is also very brave, so she volunteers to go in her father's place. The father escorts her back to the castle, and then leaves without looking back. Yeah, there's no rescue attempts like Disney would have you believe. He waves goodbye to his daughter and says, "Sayonara, sweetie." The beast is reptilian. The beast is grotesque in every sense of the word. He has a very awkward, mixed-matched animal look, kind of like Discord from My Little Pony, meant to be completely off-putting. Forget about the weirdly lovable dog-lion thing we remember from childhood. This is more of a lizard monster, which takes this story to a whole new level of creepy. The beast is pretty scary instead of furry. Beauty rarely ever sees him, but she often hears him lurking in the darkness around her, his scales dragging and sliding on the ground. To make matters worse, he also has a large elephant trunk in his face and big hairy claws. So he's some sort of weird, scary elephant man with hairy knuckles. Hey, what's not to love? He's not an angry or ravenous beast either. Instead, he's kind of dull. His conversations portray him as, well, not the brightest crayon in the box. He's described as more of a simpleton that's helplessly in love with Beauty, kind of like Forrest Gump, but with more scales, who doesn't mind buying people's daughters and making him his prisoner. There is no enchanted furniture, only monkey butlers. It's true, the singing furniture in China that wanted Beauty to be their guest were all Disney's creation. Aside from a few enchanted mirrors and a garden that flourished year-round, the castle really didn't appear enchanted, but instead gave off a more haunted vibe. What the castle did have was tons of hospitable monkey butlers and maids. There were even a few female companions designated to accompany Beauty throughout her stay. In fact, Beauty only sees the beast once a night for dinner, and the rest of her time is spent with a staff of monkeys. One ape in particular actually dresses as a Spanish gentleman to court Beauty during her evenings. Yep, Planet of the Elegant Apes. Oh, it gets weirder. There's also a working staff of monkey actors. They put on plays for Beauty by using parrots hidden under their hats to recite their lines. How bizarre is that? Parrots are also used as companions for Beauty because, unlike the monkeys, they can actually hold a conversation with her. There's also a particular room in the castle with a wall of parrots that she uses like an 18th century radio. The birds are able to sing any song for her on command. There's also mention of an invisible genie service, but it's rarely mentioned in the story beyond the fact that it exists. No problem, because I'm still getting used to this monkey butler biz. Beauty falls for a dreamy guy, so every night, Beauty dreams of this very handsome, debonair young prince that comes and sits with her. And the same thing always happens. Every night he tells her he loves her, and before she wakes up, he always says something to the effect of, "Looks can be deceiving, and remember, looks aren't everything." You know, that kind of foreshadowing deal. Honestly, it couldn't be more obvious what's going on here. But nonetheless, Beauty doesn't suspect a thing. I'm pretty sure this is where the Disney bell would have caught on. Instead, Beauty wakes up and goes about her usual day before having dinner with the beast. Similar to her dream, the same thing happens at dinner with Beast, too. Every night, the beast would ask her to marry him, and every night she says no. Then he runs off crying, and it's always a sad moment of pity before she goes off to bed and dreams of this Prince Charming guy. Wow, who's the beast now, you heartless beauty? Eventually, she starts to feel bad for the beast. I mean, how could you not? At which point, she actually develops feelings for the guy, because, well, he could eat her if he wanted to, but instead, he just serves her all day. How sweet. Or in this case, Stockholm Syndrome? Beauty now gets everything her heart desires, and she really only has to talk to the beast like once a day. So she starts thinking, hey, this really isn't a bad gig. It does seem pretty nice to have your own monkey and beast butlers. For free, I might add. Can you blame her? There is no Gaston. Thank goodness, too, because this guy is super annoying. So, there's no Gaston in the original fairy tale, but there are several other suitors willing to murder just for a chance to court Beauty. See, Disney would have you believe that Beauty was an outsider, but that's quite the contrary. She was the most beautiful and charming girl in all the land. So much so that 5 of her sister's fiancés left their respective brides to fight for Beauty's affections. Ouch. This all happens within the span of 2 months. And just like in the Disney version, the Beast does grant Beauty her freedom in order to see her family one last time. However, in the Disney version, he only lets her go home in order to save her father, who is stuck in a snowstorm and is in danger of being locked up in a mental institution upon his return because the townspeople don't believe his claim of the Beast's existence. And Belle sees all this through the Beast's magic viewing mirror. But in the Villeneuve version, the Beast gives her 2 months to visit her home just to see her family, when nothing is wrong and no one has been locked up. Aww. But should she decide to stay longer, the Beast vows to kill himself. So no pressure or anything. Oh, and he gives her a magical teleporting ring to use in order to get herself home and back to the castle. Hey, it's not that crazy. Travel time did take longer in those days. Beauty returns home only to find she misses the Beast dearly after just a few days. I'm sure being waited on hand and foot probably had something to do with it. But also, the Beast has a heart of gold, unlike those greasy dudes who ditched their sisters just to pursue her instead. Prison is suddenly sounding much better. The Beast never dies, but he is suicidal. Beauty realizes she has a good guy and decides to accept the Beast's proposal upon her return. Unfortunately, she doesn't realize that she is already a day late. When Beauty arrives back at the castle, the Beast is nowhere to be found. After searching the entire castle, she remembers a dream she had of a secret passageway hidden underneath the castle that leads to a garden. Beauty follows her memory regarding the whereabouts of the passageway, and it leads her to the dying Beast. As it turns out, he's so crazy about Beauty that he stopped eating after she left. Despite his reckless behavior, the monkey butlers quickly nurse him back to health. Ah, good old monkey butlers. Beauty confesses her love for him, and the next day, the Beast pops the big question. And this time, Beauty finally says yes. Aww. To her surprise, the curse is reversed, and the kingdom of people that she had assumed were just decorative statues are unfrozen before her very eyes. Yes, in the original story, people were never turned into sentient, moving, singing objects. They were just turned to stone. Ugh, cold. The fairy that caused the Beast was his nanny. This part of the story is more messed up than you'll want to believe. The Beast was actually raised by a powerful ancient fairy who was very old and very ugly. She was his primary caregiver since infancy, so throughout his whole life, he looked to her like a mother. He even called her mother until one day the boy came of age. When he turned 15 years old, the boy started looking pretty suave, and suddenly the ancient fairy became very attracted to the prince. Yes, things got a little awkward. Okay, a lot. The boy's foster mother asked for his hand in marriage. Obviously, this wasn't going to happen. No one in their right mind would say yes. But the fairy was persistent. She pestered the prince daily for him to accept her proposal, until eventually she gave up and placed a curse on his head, which transformed him into a hideous beast. Crazy exes, am I right? She then declared the rules of the curse. The prince shall forever remain a beast until a woman can learn to love him as the beast, not knowing he is of royal descent. This is where having a great personality pays off, right? Wrong. The fairy also declared the beast must win her heart while being perceived as slow and dim-witted. Well, now you're just being cruel, lady. Whatever happened to plenty of fish in the sea? The beast's mother calls the shots. The beast's real mother is pretty crucial to the original story. She is a kick-butt warrior queen who resided over the land while the prince was just a wee baby. One day, a rival king challenged the queen for her throne, and she decided to shut him up. The queen declared war, but before she rode off to fight for her kingdom, the queen left her wee baby prince in the hands of an ancient evil fairy, which in hindsight was a pretty poor decision. Then again, no one said she was Mother of the Year either. Anyway, she returned when he was 15 years old to find the evil fairy trying to shack up with her son, so she quickly put an end to it. Unfortunately, we know what happened next. Luckily, there was also a good fairy in this story who devised a plan to break the curse. She is actually the one who devises the beast's plan to bring Beauty to the castle after posing a threat onto her merchant father. She also trains the beast to, well, act like a beast, because even though he was transformed, he was still a refined gentleman, and it's not very useful for making threats. So it turns out that Rose was just an excuse. It was part of the good fairy's plan all along. And in fact, the beast felt really bad for threatening the merchant. So he's not even really mean, you guys. He was cursed just for turning down the jealous evil fairy. But now he found his true love. Unfortunately, after the queen realizes that Beauty is the daughter of a lowly merchant, she forbids them from getting married. Parents, am I right? The merchant's real daughter died at infancy. This is where the good fairy reveals Beauty's hidden backstory to the warrior queen. Queen. See, Beauty is actually a princess. She's the daughter of a fairy and a king. Her mother was locked away for loving a human, and Beauty was left for dead in the woods at infancy until the good fairy saved her life. The fairy brought her into town, where she stumbled upon a wealthy merchant's promising household. She flew towards the window, where she couldn't help but overhear the merchant had an infant that was deathly ill at the time, and unbeknownst to him, the baby actually passed away before the good fairy could help the poor thing. So the good fairy planted Beauty in the infant's place. Pretty messed up, and it gets even weirder because Beauty's actual father, the king, was the brother of the warrior queen. Wait, so does that mean Beauty and the Beast are cousins? Yes, Beauty is the niece of the warrior queen, and therefore the first cousin of her husband-to-be. Of course, the queen is delighted to hear the news and throws a wedding immediately. The entire city shows up, including a once wealthy merchant and his family. He has all of 2 seconds to gloat over the fact that one of his daughters is marrying a prince before the queen tells him the truth, that his real daughter died all those years ago, and Beauty is actually her niece. Despite this wildly inappropriate conversation, the once wealthy merchant swallows his sadness, and it still manages to be a happy occasion for everyone. Beauty and the prince are wed, and the two live happily ever after, traveling the world together. As the years go by, they visit the kingdom every now and then, just to reminisce over how they met in that very castle once upon a time. Aww. Nope, sorry, the cousins thing still ruins it for me. Well, there you have it. I'm Frank, and thanks for watching Disney's Dark Secrets. Did we miss any? Which ones are your darkest? Cousins? Tell us your thoughts in the comment section below, and check out our other videos. Don't forget to subscribe to channel Frederator, and click on the bell icon to become part of our notification squad. And remember, Frederator loves you, like a cousin, not romantically.